Welcome to twoquestions.tv. With me today is Mitch Matthews, and we're talking about finding work you love. Welcome to twoquestions.tv. I'm Susan Baroncini-Moe. Joining me again today is Mitch Matthews. He's a keynote speaker, success coach, and best-selling author. He's also the co-creator of the Big Dream Gathering, which we talked about last month. I'll link to that in the cards for today. And he's also the host of the Dream, Think, Do podcast. And now he's the author of this book, Dream Job Redefined, the new rules for creating a career that matters and doing work you love, which is what we're talking about today. Hey, Mitch, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. This is just fun. I love it. Getting to come back
fun.
so quickly.
Woohoo. I know. I was like, I haven't seen him in a while, and now I've seen him twice in a month. This is so exciting.
I just got to keep writing books, so I keep coming back. Like, this is great to have these.
Just come and be our dream expert, and then you come once a month. Once a month, we'll do it.
You need me, I am there.
I love it. All right. Well, okay, I'm going to hold you to that,
Yeah, you got
it.
All right. I don't throw that out lightly. I love it.
Okay, cool. Well, okay, so I like the book, this book. I liked it a lot. And I liked it for many reasons, but one reason in particular that I liked it is that you and I were talking before the interview. We both read so many books, and there are so many books that are just theory. But your book really includes not case studies exactly, but like application. And everything you talk about in the book, you're like, yeah, here's a thing that works. Here are some people who did the thing and it worked. See, it works.
Right.
That's missing from so many books. So I really appreciated that.
Well, and that was my goal, because it's one of those that, and I talk about this in the book, that at 13, I went out and got my first dream job, which is kind of crazy. I wanted to work at a bike shop in a small town in Newton, Iowa, and I basically stalked the bike shop owner until I got the job. I, cleaned out the alley. I wiped down bikes. I did whatever I could to get on his radar, and he finally hired me. So I love that. And so I had my first dream job at 13. But then later on, I got into corporate America. I started a job that was a good fit initially, became a bad fit. And I talk about it in the book. A part of me just started dying as I was going to work every day. Yeah. And I said, I've got to change. I've got to do something different. And so I set out a course for myself to do something different and achieve a dream job. And I was able to do that, which, I'm wildly grateful to say. And I said, gosh, I want more people to be able to do that. And then I started to think, well, was my story just a fluke? Did I just get lucky? And so I set out to say, all right, I know there's a lot of other people that are out there that have dream jobs. They've either created them or found them. What did they do? And so I did 200 plus interviews with people that were doing work that they love, work that mattered. And I said, okay, how did you do this? How did you find them? How did you create them? And I was able to turn a lot of those interviews then wound up being on Dream, Think, Do, my podcast. So what I love is, to your point, like, I love to read. We've got a lot of friends that are authors. Sure. I love to read people's books, and I love a good theory. But unless it's backed up by something, I don't really want to know. Like, it's like, unless I can see a story, unless I can see fruit from that in real people, in the real world, I'm just a little bit of a doubter. Yeah. And so I said, I want to include these stories, but, I'm wildly blessed to say also, in almost every situation, every strategy, every approach, I can say, hey, here's the story. But if you want to hear an interview, if you want to hear them actually tell their own story, click on this link and go listen to it. So that's really what I want to do, is fill it with practical application, but also give credit where credit was due and point people to real stories and real people.
Yeah, we're such kindred spirits in that way. I love it.
Absolutely.
Well, right up front, early in the book, you kind of lay it on the line. I mean, you make it pretty clear. We're not talking about rainbows and butterflies. We're not talking about riches and wealth even when you talk about loving your work. So can you talk a little bit about what does it mean to love your work?
Yeah, I love it. Well, and it's a great point. We talked a little bit about this before, but, some people even caution me to include dream job in the title of the book, because it used to be the thing that people aspired to, but now it's almost become this like airy fairy rainbows and butterflies, thing. And in some ways, like, dream jobs exist just like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster exist. And that to me kind of ticks me off, because it's like, I believe these things are out there. I believe that dream jobs are out there, and doing work that you love is out there. It's just, you have to decide now, because most of the world, at least, you know, the United States, as an example, about 75% of the American workforce, either, you know, they're disenfranchised, they're disengaged, they don't love what they do. And to me, that's incredibly frustrating.
It's so sad.
It's become the norm. And that's why I think in part why some people have kind of got disenfranchised with this idea of the dream job. And yes, I really clarify that I'm not talking about, you know, rainbows and butterflies and little birdies singing on your finger while you sit in your office, right? It's that perfect. Like, I even talk about that there's something we describe, and I saw this in our 200 plus interviews too. Even with a dream job, there's what we call the suck factor, right? There's at least something that you don't like to do that's a part of every job. And dream jobs, it doesn't mean that it's absent of that. You're still going to have challenges. You're still going to deal with that jackweed once in a while, either a client or a coworker or whatever. But I always say, if you can keep your suck factor to 10 to 20% and you love the rest, then that's a dream job. That's right on. And we talk about the dream job being a little bit like home. Right? When you're in your dream job, it just feels like home. It's a place where you feel safe. It's a place where you feel engaged. It's a place that feels right. And you're doing work that is meaningful, that you love. Now, one caveat is that some of the people that I interviewed, they said that, you know, they were doing work that they loved. And in some cases, we had a second classification. In some cases, some people were doing work that allowed them to do something they love outside of work. So like, as an example, I interviewed an extreme swimmer. This guy, amazing, right? Like, some people swim to Alcatraz as a big extreme swim. He swims out to Alcatraz, swims around Alcatraz, swims back. And that's a morning swim for him, right? Like, oh my God. Right? He's a corporate attorney, great guy, actually really enjoys his work, really good at his work. But one of the reasons why what he does as a dream job, he knows this fully, is because of what it allows him to do. His schedule allows him to do that. What he makes allows him to do that. He can go swim all around the world because of what he does. So sometimes he says, I can sit in, you know, meetings that might kill others, and I can sit there with a big smile on my face because I know what this job allows me to do. And so, you know, so there's a lot of different ways. There's no cookie cutter approach to what a dream job is. Everybody, that's why we talk about being redefined. You have to define what that is for you in this season of life, because that can change too. But that's what we love to do, is be able to say, all right, here's these examples of people in a lot of different ways they've defined it, and here's how they go after it.
You know, it's funny. My dad was kind of like that. He was a guy he was a physician. He had his own medical practice, and he also had a couple of other gigs now and then that he would, you know, go to the hospital and, you know, but what he really loves in life is trying different things, trying different musical instruments, trying different hobbies. And being a doctor made that possible because he had the resources that he could go out and, you know, buy all the equipment for a new hobby and, you know, go take a class. And so he had that as, you know, that was his dream life. And he liked being a doctor, but I think he likes the hobbies a little more.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's funny. That's you know, as advanced copies of the book have gotten out, that's one of the feedback that, you know, some of the feedback that we've received is that some people, it's been a wake up call for them to say, you know what? I realized that, you know, I'm actually in something close to a dream job right now. I just lost that. You know, I'd forgotten to be grateful for what I have. And we talk about the difference between a dream job and what we call a bridge job. And a bridge job is something that allows you to get to a dream job. And it's very important. And we talk about how do you select those bridge jobs? How do you retrofit a current job to make it a bridge job so it prepares you? But a lot of people have said, you know, it's made me grateful for the job I'm in, and has also helped me be more intentional about the job I'm going for. And so that also is good feedback.
Let's talk a little bit about maybe a different scenario. Someone's watching today maybe, and they have an okay job. It's keeping their bills paid, but they're kind of miserable.
Yes.
But you and I both, I think, know that being miserable can change your perception of the world around you, change the way you feel about everything.
Totally.
And so it makes it hard, I think, to tap into what do I want? Because it's so clear what you don't want that seeing what you do want can be like, it's so big that seeing what you do want can be really hard to clarify. So what would you say is the most important step for someone like that to take?
Well, I can totally identify with that because, I was in that bad fit job. Bad fit job. And I talk about this in the book. We had worked ourselves into a sitcom life, which was single income, 2 children, oppressive mortgage. So I couldn't just quit that bad fit job. I had to stay in that job. And it took a lot of time. I didn't feel like I had spare time coming out my ears. And I had been doing that for such a long time that I couldn't remember what I was passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, my wife, a real wake-up call for me was my wife sat me down and said, listen, I'm worried. And I'm like, well, what are you worried about? And she said, I'm worried about losing you. And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. And she said, no, losing who you are. Like, I think you would still be around in 30 or 40 years, but you're becoming a shell of who you used to be. And I was like, I don't want that, right? At the same time, I was thinking, just like you're talking about that scenario, what the heck do I love? What am I passionate about? It's been so long since I've experienced that, since I've really felt good at something, since I've really felt flow and lit up by that work. So I had to give myself, and we talk about this in the book, I had to give myself permission to experiment.
Mm-hmm.
I think as a society, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to go pro instantly. Like our kids, it used to be our kids. Like when I was growing up, I did a different sport every 3 months, right? I was terrible at all of them. But in the summer, I'd play baseball. In the fall, I'd play football. In the winter, I'd play basketball and wrestle. All these kinds of things. And we give ourselves those chances to try a bunch of different stuff. And now it's like kids have to focus, and you're going to play football all year. You're going to play soccer all year.
Yeah.
Good, bad, otherwise, I don't know. But we like almost force them to go pro immediately. And I think we start to do the same thing. Like, well, I can't take a class unless that's a part of an MBA program that then I'm going to take, 40 years to complete. Or I can't go and have coffee with someone unless I'm really looking for another job. And I don't want to make that obvious. It's all those things, like we make these things extreme.
Right.
And I always say, give yourself the chance to experiment. Find little things to go and try. Don't sign up for an MBA class. Don't quit your job. Go just take a class. Find somebody, that's teaching a class on something that might be related to something you're interested in, or just something else entirely. But give yourself those chances to experiment, or go and look around and say, who's doing interesting work? I mean, the amazing thing now, and that's why I talk about it being the rules that we have now. Like a lot of the rules that I talk about in the book, my grandpa couldn't have done. Right? Like, I mean, like you and I get to connect this way. It's amazing, right? We're not in the same space. I wish we were. We're not having coffee together, but we could be virtually. We can reach out and learn from people all around the world instantly. And to be able to say, all right, who's doing interesting work? And how could I learn from them? And sometimes it's just by listening to interviews and, tapping into awesome people like you, where people can get and glean information right away. Or it's somebody around the corner that's doing something interesting to say, hey, can we meet? Can we talk? I profile somebody in the book that wanted to work for Fox Racing.
Yes.
And I said, go stalk people, go have meetings with people. And he did that. He found the first person who raced for Fox Racing on Instagram, reached out, said, could we do a quick call? The guy was like, sure. They wound up having this quick call, and he asked a number of questions. We list them in the book, but then the last question is always, who else should I be talking to?
Right.
And he worked his way all the way up through the company, got to have a number of different conversations. And we did our interview, for the podcast and for the book from the back deck of Fox Racing, because that's where he works now. So it's that whole thing of, he just started reaching out. He had another job. It wasn't, it was one of those things that he just took these steps that we talk about. He gave himself permission to experiment. And that's what I say is, like, give yourself that permission to start small and just do some things, to try some things and unlock some passions, reacquaint yourself with those passions.
That's great. That's great. And I think that applies too, if you're someone who has put your needs aside for others for a long time. A lot of, women, for example, put their needs aside for their kids and for their families. And then at some point they go, oh no, now what? And I think now's a great time for experimentation. Try stuff,
Absolutely.
see what you like. Yeah.
And that in some ways kind of throw out, being worried about what people think.
Yeah.
You know, because it's that I was talking with somebody about this yesterday, and you know, it's that great phrase, don't worry about it. People are thinking about you a lot less than you think they are.
Yeah.
But it's
Yes,
that whole
that's
thing
true.
of just, you know, starting to reach out, starting to learn, starting to, you know, put yourself in some situations where you can stretch and grow. So absolutely.
Isn't it so funny how we always think everybody's thinking so much about us? No
The
one's thinking
reason
about
why I
us.
remind people is that I need to be reminded too. So it's
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mitch, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, this
Again,
is an honor. I love it. We could talk for hours.
I know, right? We should talk for hours. That's
Bring
what we
it
should
on.
do next. A
Challenge
marathon.
accepted.
Another
Exactly.
marathon. All right.
Exactly.
So, viewers, here's the book. Highly recommend. Not just for people who are getting jobs, but if you want to start a business, you don't know what that is, this book is a great guide for you. So we're going to have a link to Amazon for this book in the show notes for today down here. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.